Sage, get dressed. We're going to Beverly Hills. What is in Beverly Hills? This party is everything. The sun had barely finished climbing over Los Angeles when the argument started. Not loud arguments, not yet. The kind that lived in pauses and glances, in the way someone answered a question a second too late. These were the arguments of four young women who loved each other and were also quietly becoming tired of the same life. The apartment in Inglewood was small and warm, holding four different versions of survival. Arden's corner was the most ordered: notebook, calendar, work bag hanging on the door like it was always ready to leave before she was. Sutton's side spilled over with clothes, perfume bottles, and a ring light that suggested a life she hadn't quite reached yet. Tegan's space was minimal, as though she never fully unpacked. Rowan's was lively and scattered, full of beauty products and half-finished snacks. It was a Saturday morning. The ceiling fan turned lazily. Outside, Los Angeles had already found its voice. Arden sat on the floor calculating her monthly budget. $600. After rent, gas, food, and phone service, what remained was barely worth writing down. She wrote it down anyway. Arden always wrote things down. Refusing to look at a difficult thing had never once made it smaller. Sutton stepped out of the bathroom, phone already live in her hand, and held the screen out toward Arden's face without greeting or preamble. She said Arden needed to see something immediately. Arden told her good morning first. Sutton said yes, good morning, but she needed to see this right now. On the screen was Scarlett's Instagram. A rooftop, downtown Los Angeles glittering behind her, champagne, seafood, designer pieces, and a body that spoke of deliberate and expensive change. The caption read, God's favorite. 4,000 likes. Arden asked who it was. Sutton said Scarlett, UCLA. Same graduation year. 2 years ago, this same girl was sending voice notes about not having gas money. Now she was at the Beverly Hills Hotel on a Thursday night like it cost her nothing. Rowan stirred from her mattress and asked if it was the Scarlett that dated that short finance guy. Sutton said the very one. Rowan scrolled through in silence before saying quietly that she looks completely different. Sutton said that was exactly the point. She went to a clinic in Beverly Hills, and now look at everything that followed. What are we concluding from this? Nobody is saying anything yet. Is the conclusion for us to go for surgery and find rich men? Surgery? That's extreme. What are you reading? I'm serious. It's a shortcut to a better life. You're something else. She's joking, right? We are just talking without doing anything or finding a solution. What do you mean doing anything? Doing what specifically, if I may ask? We need good money for a better life now. How do we get the good money? We work hard and save. It will come. I am not in agreement with any plans you girls are planning. Count me out. What? Why not? Come on, let's talk about it. No, my mind is made up. There is nothing wrong in the plan. Most girls do it and nothing wrong. You sure? I'm sure. Relax. The room went quiet. The fan kept turning. Outside, the taco truck made its morning rounds. I am just tired. I have hustled a lot, but nothing to show for it. I understand. Same apartment, same number. Arden said she heard her. Sutton asked if she actually did, because sometimes it felt like Arden had made peace with this life and she had not. Arden said that didn't make her wrong, it made her human. But unhappiness with where you are, she said, doesn't mean every exit leads somewhere worth going. Then Tegan spoke, casually, the way people say the heaviest things like they're saying nothing at all. She said she had been talking to someone. 3 heads turned. His name is Grayson, and he is willing to pay for our rent. Grayson? Really? That's amazing. Wow, that's a huge relief. Who is he? We should thank him. How old is he? And are you sure he doesn't need anything more? Arden asked whether Grayson knew the real Tegan or just the version she put on. Tegan asked if that even mattered at the beginning. Arden said it mattered most at the beginning because the version he was investing in was the version he would expect forever. Rowan asked quietly what they were supposed to do then. Nobody answered. Because the answer was not one thing. It was 4 different choices quietly forming in 4 different hearts. So they sat in the heat under the slow fan, each one privately deciding how much she was willing to give and what she was willing to become. Outside, Los Angeles didn't wait. The week after that Saturday morning, something shifted in the apartment. Not dramatically, just enough to be felt. The way a room changes when someone has already made up their mind even before they say it out loud. Sutton had been doing her research for weeks, quietly, privately, the way she approached anything that mattered. She saved clinic pages, studied before and after photos, read testimonials with the focus of someone preparing for an exam. She had a number in mind, a plan. All she needed was someone to go with her. She chose Rowan, not Arden, who would ask the kind of questions that stayed with you long after they were asked. Not Tegan, who carried her doubts too openly. Rowan was easier, warm, excitable, the kind of person who could turn a waiting room into the beginning of something beautiful. On Tuesday morning, Sutton knocked on the bathroom door. "Rowan, get dressed. We're going to Beverly Hills." Rowan asked what was in Beverly Hills. Sutton told her she would explain in the car. Rowan asked what car. Sutton said the ride was already outside. Rowan was dressed in 7 minutes. The clinic was exactly what its Instagram page had promised. White walls, cool air conditioning that felt like relief after the Los Angeles heat, framed before and after photographs lining the corridor like a gallery of transformation. Everything about this space was designed to reassure, to soften hesitation, to make the decision feel not just acceptable, but obvious. The doctor was younger than expected, well-spoken, calm. He carried the quiet confidence of someone who had repeated the same conversation so many times it no longer required effort. He explained everything with smooth clarity. Results, recovery, process. Arranging the words in a way that made it all sound not just possible, but sensible. "Trust me, when we are done, you would appreciate your body more." Rowan asked about pain. He called it discomfort, temporary, manageable. Sutton asked about recovery time. 2 to 4 weeks. Rowan studied the photos, searching for something real beneath the perfection. The doctor smiled. Everything, he assured them, was real. By the time they left, Sutton had signed the intake forms. Her procedure was scheduled for the following month, and Rowan, who had come only for company, had booked her own consultation, her excitement bright and immediate, like someone finally giving themselves permission to want what they had been pretending not to want. On the ride home, Rowan talked the entire way. Ideas, plans, possibilities, her voice filling the car with energy. Sutton responded when necessary, smiling in the right places. But most of the time, she watched Los Angeles move past the window, quieter than her decision suggested. That evening, neither of them mentioned the clinic to Arden. While Sutton and Rowan were in Beverly Hills, Tegan sat across from Grayson for the first time in a restaurant on the west side. He was exactly as she had imagined, well-dressed without trying too hard, soft-spoken without weakness, carrying the kind of presence that came from long familiarity with money, the kind that did not need to announce itself. He ordered for both of them, and somehow it was exactly what she would have chosen. He asked her what she wanted from life, not from him, but from life. Tegan said stability. He said stability was underrated. She told him most people her age were chasing excitement, and she was tired of pretending she wanted the same. He studied her for a moment, then told her she was more self-aware than most people he met. She asked if that was a compliment. He said it was an observation. She laughed. A real one. That night, back in the apartment, Tegan sat on her mattress, turning her phone over in her hands. A quiet warmth settling in her chest. Something new, something she recognized, and something she did not entirely trust. Across the room, Arden looked up from her desk and studied her face the way she always did. Carefully, without intrusion. She asked how the evening was. Tegan said it was fine. She paused, then asked if she meant fine or actually fine. Tegan smiled despite herself. She said, "Actually fine." Arden held her gaze for a moment, then nodded and returned to her work. She didn't push, but she paid attention because quiet decisions always eventually reveal themselves. Sutton returned from her procedure 6 weeks later, and the apartment received her differently. She stood in the doorway in a fitted outfit. "Babe, you look different. What happened?" "Don't worry, babe. Just admire what you see." Rowan screamed, an actual full scream. Even Tegan, who rarely performed surprise, sat up slowly and took a long look. Arden smiled. A real smile. "But, babe, seriously, what is going on? Give us the gist." Rowan circled her like a photographer at a shoot, asking who did her hair, where she got the outfit, how she was feeling. Sutton laughed and said she was feeling like herself finally. Arden asked quietly if she was okay. Sutton told her she was better than okay. Arden said that wasn't what she asked. Sutton held her gaze for a moment, before saying she was fine. Arden, genuinely fine. Arden nodded and said nothing more, but she noticed the way Sutton lowered herself carefully onto the mattress and the small wince she covered quickly with a smile. The likes came in fast. The DMs followed. Invitations arrived from people who had never noticed her before. Events, dinners, gatherings on the west side where the air smelled like money and everyone was performing for everyone else. Sutton moved through all of it with the confidence of someone who had paid for her seat at the table and intended to get full value. Tegan was already comfortable in that world by now. Grayson had been consistent: dinners, weekend trips, a new phone she mentioned casually, as though it had simply appeared. She was careful never to seem too grateful, because she understood instinctively that gratitude gave men like Grayson a particular kind of power. So she received everything with a quiet elegance that made him want to give more. Rowan recovered from her own procedure and immediately began building her new image online. The photos went up carefully, angles chosen, lighting controlled, captions crafted. The response was everything she had hoped for. Strangers were commenting, followers were climbing, and for the first time in a long time, she woke up excited to look at her phone. The three of them moved through Los Angeles that season like they had finally been granted access to a room they had been standing outside for years. Arden watched from a careful distance. She still went to work every morning, still packed her lunch, still wrote in her notebook every evening. She was happy for her friends, genuinely, not performatively. But she also noticed the things the Instagram posts didn't show. She noticed Sutton taking painkillers she didn't mention. She noticed Tegan laughing a little too hard at things that weren't funny, the way people laugh when they are managing something privately. She noticed Rowan wincing when she sat down and waving it off as nothing. She noticed all of it and said nothing because these were grown women making their own choices, and Arden understood the difference between concern and control. But she kept her notebook close. She kept building the quiet thing nobody was paying attention to yet. And she kept her eyes open because in Los Angeles, the season always changes. The only question is whether you are ready when it does. The cracks did not arrive all at once. They appeared the way they always do, slowly, in private, in the small moments between the performances. Sutton had been ignoring her body for weeks. The pain that began as a dull ache in her lower back had quietly become something sharper, more insistent, the kind that worked hard, odd hours and refused to be reasoned with. She took painkillers the way some people took vitamins, routinely, without thought, hoping the problem would eventually lose interest and leave. She had not returned to the clinic for her follow-up appointment. She told herself she would go next week. Next week kept moving forward without her. One evening, Arden found the pill bottle beside her mattress and picked it up. She asked Sutton how long she had been taking these. Sutton said it was just for the discomfort. It was normal. The doctor had said some discomfort was normal. Arden asked when she had last spoken to the doctor. Sutton said she had been busy. Arden set the bottle down carefully and told her she needed to go back. Sutton said she would. Arden told her she meant this week, not eventually. Sutton said, "Okay, Arden, okay." She did not go that week. Rowan's situation was quieter, but no less serious. A low fever she attributed to stress, a swelling that she photographed from careful angles that made it invisible online. She had built an entire public image around her transformation, and the thought of admitting that something might be wrong felt like dismantling everything she had just constructed. So she managed it privately, the way young women are so often taught to manage inconvenient things, silently and with a smile ready for whenever anyone looked her way. Tegan's cracks were not physical. They were the kind that appeared in behavior, in the small recalibrations a person makes when they are slowly adjusting themselves to fit someone else's expectations. Grayson had begun to change, not dramatically, not in ways that were easy to name. The warmth was still there, but it had become conditional, a temperature he controlled. He called at odd hours and noted, without raising his voice, when she took too long to answer. He made small remarks about her friends, nothing direct, just observations dropped casually into conversation like seeds he was planting and waiting on. One night, he told her that the girls she spent time with were not at her level anymore. Tegan asked what he meant. He said she was moving in different circles now, and her association should reflect that. She told him her friends were important to her. He was quiet for a moment before saying, "Of course," he understood completely. And then he changed the subject so smoothly, she almost didn't notice that the seed had already been planted. She came home that night and sat in the bathroom for a long time. Arden was still awake when she came out. She didn't ask what was wrong. She simply moved her notebook and made space beside her and waited. Tegan sat down and said Grayson thought she was outgrowing her friendships. Arden asked what she thought. Tegan said she didn't know anymore. Arden told her that not knowing was fine, but the moment someone else's opinion of her life became louder than her own, that was the moment to pay close attention. Tegan was quiet for a long time before she said she heard her. Arden said, "Good." Outside, Los Angeles continued without pause or sympathy because the city had seen this story before. There's a moment in every story like this one where the thing everyone privately feared stops being a fear and becomes a fact. That moment arrived on a Friday night on the West Side, surrounded by music and champagne, and people who were too busy performing their own happiness to notice that someone nearby was in trouble. The event was the kind that looked beautiful from the outside. A rooftop gathering, fairy lights strung between pillars, a DJ playing music at exactly the right volume, tables dressed with bottles that cost more than a month's rent in Inglewood. Sutton had gotten them on the list through someone she had met at a previous outing. They arrived dressed and confident, moving through the crowd with the ease of people who belonged. Rowan had not been feeling well for 3 days. She knew it. She had taken something for the fever that morning and told herself the swelling was just the body still settling. She had posted a photo 2 hours before the event. Angles perfect, caption confident, and the comments had been so warm and affirming that it felt almost like medicine. So she got dressed. She did her makeup carefully. She went. On the way there, Sutton asked if she was okay. Rowan said she was fine, just a little tired. Sutton said she didn't have to come if she wasn't feeling well. Rowan told her she was fine, Sutton. She was fine. For the first hour, she managed well enough. She laughed in the right places, took photos, held her glass without drinking much. But the heat of the rooftop was unforgiving, and her body had been carrying something it was no longer willing to carry quietly. It happened without warning. One moment she was standing beside Sutton, making conversation, and the next she was on the ground and the music was still playing, and it took several long seconds for anyone to understand what had just happened. Sutton's scream cut through everything. She dropped beside Rowan and called her name, shaking her shoulder, asking her to open her eyes. Someone in the crowd shouted to call an ambulance. Someone else said, "Give her air. Give her space." Sutton kept saying her name, "Rowan, Rowan, look at me," her voice climbing with each repetition. The ambulance took 20 minutes. They were the longest 20 minutes Sutton had ever sat through. Arden got the call when she was at her desk. She arrived at the hospital still in her work clothes, notebook tucked under her arm out of pure habit, and found Sutton in the waiting room sitting rigidly in a plastic chair, still dressed for the event, mascara tracking silently down her face. Arden sat beside her and took her hand. Sutton said she should have made her stay home. Arden said she couldn't have made Rowan do anything. Sutton said she took her to that clinic. She sat there with her and made it feel exciting and safe, and she had no business doing that. Arden told her she couldn't have known. Sutton said she should have asked more questions. She should have slowed down. Tegan arrived 30 minutes later, still in her coat, breathless, rushing. The doctor came out eventually and told them it was a post-surgical complication, an infection that had been developing for longer than anyone realized. He said they had caught it in time. He said she was stable. She was lucky. Sutton stared at the floor when he said the word lucky, because luck felt like the wrong word entirely for a situation that had been building quietly for weeks, while everyone looked away, including herself. The three of them sat in that waiting room until past midnight. The fluorescent light above them hummed without pause. And outside the hospital, Los Angeles continued exactly as it always did, loud, indifferent, unbothered. It was Arden who finally spoke, quietly, to no one in particular. Some prices announce themselves early. Others wait until you are somewhere you cannot leave before they present the bill. Nobody responded, but nobody disagreed, either. There is a particular kind of silence that follows a crisis. Not peaceful silence, the other kind. The kind that sits heavily in a room and forces everyone in it to look at things they have been carefully avoiding. That silence moved into the apartment after Rowan came home from the hospital. She recovered slowly, propped against pillows, quieter than anyone had ever seen her. The beauty products on her side of the room gathered dust. The phone that had never left her hand now sat face down for hours at a time. She had lost something in that hospital, not just her health, but the particular confidence that had carried her through the last few months. The version of herself she had been building so carefully online felt very far away from the person lying on that mattress. One afternoon, Arden brought her food and sat beside her. Rowan stared at the ceiling for a long moment before saying she didn't even really want it, the procedure. Not deeply. She had wanted what she thought would come with it. Arden asked what she thought would come with it. Rowan said confidence, belonging, the feeling that she was finally enough. Arden was quiet before she said, "Those things will not come from the outside." Rowan said she knew that now. Arden told her she had always known it. She had just hoped she was wrong. Rowan didn't argue because it was true. Sutton's reckoning was a different kind. She had returned to the clinic finally, not for Rowan's reasons, but for her own body, which had stopped asking politely and was now demanding attention. The doctor was professional and careful, but his concern was visible. He told her the complication was manageable, but that she had waited far longer than she should have. He asked why she hadn't come back sooner. She didn't have a good answer for that. Sitting in the consultation room alone this time, without Rowan's excitement filling the space beside her, the clinic felt different. The framed before and after photos on the wall looked different, too. Less like a gallery of possibilities and more like a gallery of decisions, each one made by a real person who had sat in this same chair. She came home and sat on her mattress and did something she hadn't done in months. She opened her calculator and counted what everything had actually cost her. The procedure, the clothes, the events, the maintenance of the image. The number was sobering. And that was before counting the things that didn't have numbers, the pain she had ignored, the follow-up she had skipped, the friendship she had pulled Rowan into without stopping to ask enough questions. She sat with all of it quietly that evening. No ring light, no phone, just herself and the accounting. It was Tegan's reckoning that was the hardest to watch. She ended things with Grayson on a Wednesday evening. Not dramatically. There was no shouting, no confrontation, no moment of explosive clarity, just a phone call, her voice steady, saying she was stepping back. He was quiet for a moment before he said he was sorry to hear that and wished her well. The call lasted 4 minutes. She sat very still afterward, phone in her lap, staring at nothing. Arden came and sat beside her without being asked. After a long silence, Tegan said she missed who she was before she started adjusting herself to fit his expectations. Arden asked when she had noticed she was doing it. Tegan said, "Early." She had noticed early and kept going anyway because the comfort was real, even if the cost was, too. Arden said that was the most honest thing she had said in months. Tegan laughed quietly and said it didn't feel good to say. Arden told her honesty rarely felt good immediately. That came later. Tegan leaned her head on Arden's shoulder. Inside the apartment, 4 young women were finally, fully sitting with the truth of their choices. And that, painful as it was its own kind of beginning. They were back where it all started. Same apartment, same fan turning slowly overhead, same Los Angeles humming outside the window. But the women sitting in that room were not the same ones who had argued on that Saturday morning months ago. Something in each of them had shifted, quietly, painfully, and permanently. Rowan was healing. Sutton was facing her consequences with open eyes. Tegan had found her way back to herself, and Arden had kept building through all of it, quietly, patiently, on a foundation that belonged entirely to her. Over a simple dinner of pasta and garlic bread, Arden told them her small digital business had landed its first real paying client. Not life-changing money, but hers, completely, unshakably hers. Sutton said she was proud of her and meant it. Tegan said Arden had been building while the rest of us were performing, and she wanted her to know she had always seen it. Arden said she wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just terrified of building something that could be taken from her, so she built something that couldn't. Nobody said anything after that because everything had already been said. The price of the soft life is not always paid in money. Sometimes it is paid in your health, your peace, your sense of self, the version of you that existed before the world convinced you she wasn't enough. And the most dangerous thing about that kind of payment is that by the time you feel the costs, you have already been charged. But the most powerful thing a young woman can do in a city that profits from her hunger is decide, quietly, firmly, without performance, that she was always enough. Arden knew that from the beginning. The others simply had to learn it the hard way.